Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of FitRx. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Dennis, and I have a great guest for you today, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and she has a long list of accolades. So she is a doctor of chiropractic. She is an epigenetic human performance success coach. She is board certified in holistic health, has a master's in wellness, leadership, performance. She is a best-selling author. She's a podcaster. She's founder of the Impact Experts Network, which is a home to the women's impact and longevity expert platforms. She is the chief officer and director of Apeiron. Am I saying that right?
Apeiron.
Apeiron Academy of Epigenetics. And probably more. So that's a whole lot of stuff. But anyway,
Awesome.
so very, very excited to have her. So, Dr. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Our intro is always so interesting. It's like, okay, wait, here's all the things, but wait, can we just start talking?
Yeah, very good. Anything else that I missed there that you want to throw out?
Oh, you know what? That would take the whole show. No, I'm
Okay.
joking. People can find out more over at the website. I am me. I'm here, a person that loves to talk about longevity and living our life optimized at every age and every stage. So I think that in and of itself will provide some context for a fun conversation.
Perfect. Well, that's a perfect segue to my next question is I always just like getting to know my guests a little bit and kind of how they got into this space. So obviously you're not a regular chiropractor. I mean, you're into all this wellness and longevity. So just kind of tell our listeners how you got to be where you are today.
It's a lifetime journey, but the short answer is, I never went out looking. I never thought I was going to become a doctor. I thought I was going to become an attorney. I was a professional dancer. I found my way on television, and from television, I found my way to many stages and many audiences. And it was kind of my love of dance that actually took me into chiropractic, which was interesting. And when I got out of chiropractic, I was really thought like, okay, great. Here's this natural approach to just health and healthcare, if you will. And so this must be what it is. Like the nervous system is regulating the body, and I quickly realized, again, as a young practitioner ready to go out and just take on the world, like, no, there's so much more to this. I'd already grown up. I was already a nutritionist and a personal trainer and a fitness instructor and doing all those things. And so I had kind of this wellness approach because I started dancing when I was 2. So my whole affect was about being in my top physical performance, right? And so then I just started to look and go, what's really going on here? And so I quickly noticed patterns and was drawn into the power of the mind and what role is the nocebo and the placebo effect, and really then took kind of a deep dive into neuroscience, into psychoneuroimmunology and NLP, neurolinguistic psychology, and all that kind of fun stuff. And that just kept threading the needle. And from there, I did a deep dive into functional medicine. And I was always taking a systems approach. Always understood that one input did not equal one output in the body. And so it's kind of as you lean in and you get more curious and more curious, but at the same time, I always had the ability to zoom out and see the totality of these various pieces. Like, hey, here's a specialist over there and a specialist over there. Yet these pieces are not talking, but they really do talk in the human body, right? And so kind of continuing to add over time. And so I was always doing epigenetics before I was even knew I was doing epigenetics. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but it just kind of naturally, as the science came out and as I just did a deeper dive, always wanting to learn more, the path revealed itself. And now we're kind of at a critical mass where people are like, what is this epigenetic stuff? And what do you mean longevity? We're living longer. And wait, we can actually kind of be in control of our destinies and our genes aren't in control of us. So now people are curious and they're wanting to learn more and understand more.
Okay. Very good. So now you're involved in a place that does precision medicine, and we can
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what that is.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's just define that before we get into the book. But I mean, what is precision medicine?
Precision medicine is really more of a personalized and precise approach to look at how to optimize your system. So through the traditional healthcare lens, we're taught to look for the problem and to assume there's a problem, something's broken, we need to fix it. And we really kind of look down these individual pathways, again, forgetting that the system is functioning as a whole. And so really through precision medicine, we're saying, how can we look at your blueprint? How can we look at your biology and physiology to understand precisely what your system needs, but not just a certain pathway? We're still taking a 360, very comprehensive approach, not looking for a root problem, because you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You're this amazing, amazing expression of life that just needs to be optimized. So how do we bring you back into balance? And then how do we continue to take you into thriving states?
So are most of the people that you see, are they people that are pretty sick that they have the traditional healthcare system has failed them and they're looking for answers, or are they people who are pretty healthy and just want to get healthier and optimize their health, or is it a little bit of all the above?
That's such a good question. It's a little bit of both. When I was more in my functional medicine practice, like so full time every day, we're integrative, and the people that were coming were really sick because the idea, again, you got to think mindset. The idea is I'm broken, something's wrong with me, nobody's able to help me and figure it out. There must be something. I'm not crazy, and they're not. And so that was kind of the at the times this idea of yes, we're going to dig for the root cause, that there's never just one root cause. There's all these inputs coming into the system that create this one big cascade effect, right? And so at this point, through a precision, I like to really say, it is precision medicine, but it's really precision living, precision longevity. And so through this precision lens, most of my clients are educated. They are high achievers and performers. They're out there really showing up, and they notice that their system is shifting and they are having some symptoms. They're not full on disease processes. A lot of them have anxiety or anxiousness to some level because, again, they're really kind of overdriving their system. They may have some hormonal imbalance and some fatigue, but it's really like they're starting to say, hey, things are not what they used to be. And I don't want to all of a sudden become diagnosed and have some serious disease. And so it's enough that they kind of wake up and say, I think there's got to be something more that can get me back into more of my optimized state.
Very good. So obviously you have a lot of experience. So you took all this and you wrote this book called The Codes of Longevity, and it was a very good, very interesting book, and not what I expected, because this is just I have this podcast. It's kind of my space that I enjoy, and so I feel like I've read all the stuff out there, and so I guess when I saw the title, I expected another book about, eat right, exercise more, and fast. I mean,
Yeah.
and those are important things. I'm
Yeah.
not diminishing those things, but it was, I mean, way deeper than that. And you get into the mental, stuff, and you interviewed just all kinds of experts in different areas, and so it was very just holistic approach to longevity. So anyways, I was just pleasantly surprised by the book, and so I want to get into that a little bit, and just so the listeners know, we're not even going to touch the surface on all the information in this book, and so there's a lot of stuff in there, but we'll get to what we can here. So I just took some notes, and so you mentioned kind of the the mental aspect of longevity, and that's something that I certainly haven't talked about on this show, and that I really haven't read much about, but
Mhm.
you put in there to set your longevity life vision.
Yeah.
What is that?
Ooh, first of all, I thank you, by the way, for that feedback. You just never know. You write a book, you do the work, you put things out there, and you hope it's well received. And I think we're all our own worst critics, right? It's kind of, I could have had this and should have had that, and could have been more. So thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And it is just scratching the surface and the whole intention is how do we create a new vision for what's possible? Because so much more is possible. And we are walking around every day unknowingly, unconsciously placing limitations on ourselves, on our ability, on our capacity. We have deep desires. We want to live a meaningful, rich life, like feeling our best, looking our best, loving our best, doing all the yummy things. And it almost seems as though one day symptoms start to creep up and it kind of feels like, oh man, I just never know where it's going to come from. And I want to live fast and maybe die young because living old doesn't really look that enticing. And so it almost feels as though it's somehow out of our control. And it's not something that we have any active participation in. It's just, this is the process. We're going to look that way one day. We're going to act that way one day. We're going to lose our mind one day. We're going to become babies again one day. Okay. So it was super important for me to say, well, what if? So when I started this project, because I am a bit in the futurist space, so enough to be dangerous. I'm definitely not a Peter, Diamandis. Like, I'm not out there at Singularity University, but there are so many things dropping in to humanity in the next 5 to 10 years that we don't even right now know how to wrap our heads around. And it's not being talked about in everyday circles. And I look and I say, we have no idea because we're not aware. So what if we could realize more is possible? And we begin within ourselves. I said, so we are living longer. Studies are now absolutely 100% proving that we now are able to age in reverse. So there's kind of this longevity escape velocity. And it's not like all of a sudden you're going to live 100 years longer. We're not there quite yet. But there are these little net positive gains where we're finding, like, hey, when we do certain protocols, we do certain activities, we do take in certain nutrients or peptides, we gained 2 years, we gained 7 years. So it's kind of this idea of, instead of aging forward, you're going to youth backwards. So you get this youthing effect by 2 years. So a little bit every couple of years, we're extending that lifespan. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I said to my husband and son one day, I'm like, what if, how long would you guys want to live if you could live with full capacity, doing what you love with the people you love for as long as possible? Like, you didn't have to become frail. You didn't have to break down. You didn't have to lose your mind. Like, how long would you want to live? And it took us all kind of by surprise. We were all like, huh. And, like, wow. And my son's like, I'm going to have to think about that. You have to think about that. And so your longevity life vision, first and foremost, begins with this idea of, well, it's not if you're going to, because know that the science is here, you are going to live longer. So let's just put that out there and say you are going to live longer. So now, how about if we become intentional about it? And I'm going to give you a little formula where you can start to wrap your head around the potential and the possibility. So the fact that we are living longer, if we get conscious about how do we want to live, it brings us into it to go, how do I want to be living now? Because this is going to set me up for then. And if you right now take the age of your longest living relative, it's probably a grandparent, and you then subtract your current age, you have your current longevity potential. So for me, my oldest living relative was my great grandmother. She made it to 95. I'm 49. And so what does that give me? Like, it gives me how many? I can't even do the math right now. Like another, 55, 54 years or something like that. In essence, I have more time left than I've already lived. And I'm like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good right now. I do a lot of things well. That's awesome. I want to maintain this. And so if I've got even more time left, because in my brain, we think, oh man, 70, 80, man, 80 is good. You make it to 85, you're crushing it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have more years left to live. So that's your first place. Oldest living relative, subtract your current age, and that's your baseline. Now, there's more that we can add on to it to kind of add it to show with modern technology and advancements that's also creating life extension. And so now it gives you a container to actually care and realize, like, well, it's not just by chance. Like, there's a really good potential that I am living longer. And so how do I want to take care of myself? I know that was a long answer, but I feel like this is really important. We sometimes neglect the power of our own mind, of what it plays in the creation of our actual reality, because we're not necessarily thinking about it. And we're letting all the other cues from the outside world unconsciously tell us what is possible. So we're just looking around and seeing, well, man, 80 years old looks like you're, walking with a walker. Or, hey, grandpa only made it to 75 and he was in a wheelchair. And so we let these other external visions kind of define our unconscious mind, and we never question it. So setting your longevity life vision is questioning what is now. If you just ask what if, what is possible, what could be possible for you.
Okay, very good. Um, Well, let's get into some things that can, I guess, improve our not only our lifespan, but our health
Yeah.
span. And again, we're just going to touch the surface here because there's a lot of stuff in this book. But some notes that I had taken when I was going through, and again, we probably won't be able to spend much time on each one of these, but uh, genomic instability. So these
Yeah.
are things that I jotted down that can impact longevity. So what is genomic instability?
So that's the first of the 9 hallmarks of aging. So there are really back in 2013, this was the first time this big study came out in Cell magazine, and it's really saying, hey, we've identified why we age. So here's the idea around longevity. If we understand what's happening metabolically, physiologically inside of our bodies, then from a scientific standpoint, we can start to say, okay, great, we know what's causing aging. So now, can we slow it down? Can we stop it? Can we reverse it? And so the 9 hallmarks look at what they have foundationally said. These are all the ways that aging gets accelerated. Things go haywire, they get disrupted. And so, right there at that beginning, when we're really looking at that genomic instability, this is your DNA. So your DNA is going to be your life code, right? And all it is your proteins that when it's signaled from above the gene with the epigenetic information, if you will, that signal, it's just going to say, hey, we need to replicate. We need to open up this part of the code and we need to make some liver cells. We need to make some bone cells. It's just the code is simply what is needed in the body to continue to express life. And so what happens is every day there's hundreds of thousands of times that our DNA is called on to replicate. And what's natural over the course of a day, over the course of years, that there are breaks in the DNA. Thousands of times a day, every day, there are breaks. And so think of this like your car breaking down, right? There's all of a sudden the car breaks down. You got to take it into the shop. Well, the body is designed to know how to repair that DNA. Yet, what is happening fundamentally is that the more burden to the system, the more of, we'll just call it the stress load to the system to kind of keep it simple, then the greater interference, the more breaks occur. And so the damage is kind of outweighing the rate at which the system can repair. So at the end of the day, we've got more damage than repair. Now, if things are not repairing, if the DNA is literally breaking and it's not being restored, now we've got interference and interruption in the code. So then when things are supposed to replicate normally, they're not. So that's the very foundational way. And the biggest thing that's going to do that is a lot of environmental toxins are going to be one of the first things to really start to wear down that process.
Okay. I was going to wait and ask this till we got through more of them, but I can't wait that long. So what, because you mentioned environmental toxins. So with that specifically, like what can we do to reverse that or protect ourselves against that?
Yeah. And so what I want to do, that's a really great question, Doc. And I want to take one moment to say, because there are 9, and I know there's a lot you want to cover. If I had to, and I will go through all of them, but if I had to look and say, again, how do we put a container around this? The stressors, chemical, environmental, mental, emotional, physical stressors. Too much overload, right? Stress doesn't have to be bad. In fact, there's a chapter that says say yes to stress. Stress is actually designed to help us evolve and thrive in new ways. So it's not foe, it's friend. Yet we are typically not taking the time to support our system. So let's just think about, to your question, okay, so environmental stressors. So it's everything from tobacco, it's going to be medications, it's going to be air pollution, it's going to be pollutants coming in, toxic chemicals that the body has to, deal with, right? Endocrine disruptors, I'm sure you talk about that. It's those types of outside disruptors to the system. But it's also saying, what are some of the byproducts? Well, it's all an inflammatory process. So what are the things then that accelerate inflammation in the body? So there can be other things. We'll keep this simple. So what do we do about it? Step 1, in the back of the book, there is a full assessment. So you can take it and you'll be able to answer it, and you'll be able to see exactly the places, even around environmental stressors, where you may personally have the greatest risk or exposure, because the very question is also the solution, right? So if you are, let's say you smoke, well, if you're a smoker versus a non-smoker, the answer is going to be different. So if you're a smoker, then we want to look, the approach is always this: can you reduce? So we know that just to quit smoking is not always easy for smokers, right? Of course, it's the number one all-cause mortality rate. Like, smoking's not good. But how do we have a really realistic approach to it? Well, can we reduce the amount? Can we reduce? Is there just a way, instead of a full cigarette, can you do half of a cigarette when you normally would smoke a full one, right? So it's kind of this reduce, remove, replace, so that we can restore, replenish, and rejuvenate the body. So I'd say take the assessment, but just become curious about your environment and the things you're exposed to, and just set one and go, could I do less of that? Am I drinking a lot of foods and beverages with artificial sweeteners, and they're loaded down with chemicals? Am I eating a lot of processed foods or going through drive-through? Am I out in the sun all day? And and I don't wear any kind of sunscreen. I don't want you to wear sunscreen all the time. That's another conversation. But like, can I first get curious about what I'm exposed to, so that I can just simply go, step one, let's reduce the exposure.
Okay. Yep. Great advice. Okay, so the second one, and again, we don't have to spend a lot of time on each one of these, but telomere attrition. So I heard a lot about telomeres when I was doing an age management certification. So talk a little bit about what telomeres are, and maybe how we can improve that.
Yeah. So they're the little protective caps on the end of the DNA, and they ensure proper cell replication. They're also, there's only so many times that the DNA will replicate. And so, it's really been, there's some new information on this, but it's historically been equated to, hey, length of your telomeres is in direct correlation with lifespan. That data is changing a little bit. However, it's still protecting the integrity of that DNA for proper replication. And one of the best things is truly going to be helping to lower the inflammatory burden, which is going to produce those senescent cells. And the fast daily way to do it is some intermittent fasting. But let me be super clear about this. The most basic type of intermittent fasting that you need to do, and I'm sure you talk a ton about this, Doc, is it can be a simple 12-hour window. Like, your body just needs that 12 hours for the normal detox processes to deal with these environmental stressors and the things coming in. Like, it just needs 12 hours when you're not eating. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to only eat one meal a day. And because you intermittent fast too long and too extreme, that also becomes a stress for the body. So think of things in cycles.
Okay. So next is epigenetics and epigenetic alterations, and that's kind of your wheelhouse. So I haven't talked about epigenetics on this show yet. So just kind of explain what is epigenetics, and more maybe about what you do and how that helps people.
Sure. So our genetic code, of course, we understand that as blueprint. And for the longest time, we thought it's our blueprint of destiny. If it's our DNA, this is what happens. Your DNA literally is, think of it just like ingredients to a recipe. It's just there. It's just potential. That's all it is. What happens is then there is a signal that basically says, hey, it's your little chef. Hey, these are the ingredients I need. I'm going to pull from the pantry. I'm going to pull them, and I'm going to use them in this way to create this type of dish, if you will, this dinner, this dessert, this salad, this whatever. So your DNA is your blueprint of potential. It's your code of life. Epigenetics are literally the signal from above the gene. It means above the gene. And it is what's going to determine how the genome expresses. So 99.9% of our genetic code is identical, you and I. It's 0.1% is what is going to be a phenotypic expression. How it expresses creates thriving and flourishing. How it expresses is what determines you from me and our differences as individuals. And so epigenetics is about the expression, the signal that causes the expression of the DNA to turn on or off or up or down.
Very good. And so, um, how can we utilize that? Like, how do you utilize that practically? Like when you see
Mhm.
patients when they come to see you?
Yeah, I like to keep things super simple. So
Okay.
just think it's, garbage in, garbage out, right? Like good stuff in, good stuff out. So the one input does not equal one output, but epigenetics are the signal. So they're the signal from above the gene. Okay, well, what creates that signal? Well, it's the environment. Okay, well, what is informing that environment? Well, it's all of our chemistry. It's our thoughts, our habits, our actions, our interactions. It truly is. There is this pathway. There are these little pockets of little messengers, if you will, called microRNAs. And our system was designed to determine, hey, humanity, we need to evolve. Keep the species alive, keep us moving forward. How do we know if it's safe to move forward? How do we know if it's safe and life sustaining and life giving? Well, there has to be a communication pathway between the inner code and the outer world. And so that's where our senses are going to come in, right? There's going to be some perception, some observation, sights, sounds, things we're ingesting, hearing. But there are also these things that we're not necessarily consciously controlling. So information from the environment itself, as well as our perception and interaction with the environment. Is it safe? Is it time to go out and thrive? Or is it super dangerous out there? Stay in the cave, hold on lockdown, like it's not time yet. And so if we just have that basic understanding, outer world is always talking to, informing, and influencing the expression of our potential in the inner world. So now you say, how do we use this practically? Okay, well, step one, simply become more curious and observational about yourself. What are you doing? What are your daily habits? What are your daily choices? How are you interacting with life? And this is simply get curious, don't judge yourself. Like there's no benefit in judging. I'm not supposed to do this and I should do this. No coulda, woulda, shouldas. Just get curious, notice what you notice. And then you get to go, okay. So when I work with somebody, we are going to look at their genetic code. We are going to look at their biomarkers. We're going to do a very deep lifestyle assessment. We're going to look at all these components and areas of their life, and to get many data points as possible to understand how they're making habits and choices and interacting in these different ways, but also how they're perceiving those areas. So then we look at the subjective. That's how I think and feel about it. And the objective, right? That's going to be the biomarkers and the lab work and the genetics. And we're going to layer those. And we're going to now have a much fuller and clearer picture. And then it becomes super clear. Hey, guess what, doc? You are not sleeping. So how do I use this practically? The quality of the signal produces the quality of the output. System, sleep drives your system. We got to work on sleep. How do we start to get more of it and better quality, right? So it just shows you how to do more good, less that's not as optimal for you.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah, I have a lot of conversations in the clinic of people coming in, and their family members all have diabetes, and now
Yeah.
they have high blood sugar, and they're like, "Oh well, yeah, I knew it was coming. I'm screwed." Or everybody in my family has Alzheimer's disease. I know I'm going to get it, and so we have those discussions that you're exactly right about. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It's about the genes that are expressed. We can prevent those genes from being expressed
Yeah,
through environment and everything you just said. So
completely.
yeah, I think you
So I
said it
love
perfectly.
this. And I want to talk about, like, this is so important, so important. So um, I myself, like when I look at from a genetic potential standpoint, I have an increased potential risk for insulin resistance. I have two family members that, like, one was my great aunt, and the other is an aunt. So I've had historically two family members that have actually expressed that potential. And now I don't sit there and go, oh crap, it's a done deal. It's in my genes and they had it. So that must mean I have it. Not at all. So it's exactly this epigenetics. You become the co creator and the controller of your own destiny. Now, if I just said, oh, well, it's out of my control, it's in my genes, then I'm thinking my genes run my destiny, and they don't. And I realize so what is it that is impacting blood sugar? Well, of course it's sugar, but it's also stress, and it's high fat, like high oxidation rates in the body. So because those are stressors to the system. So it's simply like, look, I just eat clean, I live clean, I love fully, I'm happy. And guess what? My A1C is 5.0. My glucose is always in the 80s, right? Like I am not expressing that, not expressing it because I'm choosing myself versus somebody else's story.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
well said. So, okay, we'll see if we can get to how many of these we can get to, but let's see. Um, all right, so this one I want to ask about
Okay.
deregulated nutrient sensing. What is
Yeah.
that?
So, this is really where we've got two main pathways when it comes to in this category. Deregulated nutrient sensing is all of a sudden, again, just let's things are disrupted, communicate signals are not signaling properly. And what do I mean by this? We have what's called the mTOR pathways. And the mTOR are there and they're designed to build things. They're important in times of growth. And then we have the AMPK pathways, which are catabolic, and they are, so instead of building up, we're going to tear down. And we always need both. We do need both. What's happened in modern living is we've become very out of balance with these because of just our food choices and the sad diet. What's happening is the mTOR pathways are really being activated all the time. And so that's going to be dysregulating insulin growth factor, right? So it's going to keep the system in this growth phase from all the foods and all that insulin dysregulation, which we kind of just talked about. And again, know that insulin dysregulation doesn't just occur from food. It is so driven by stress. And Doc, I'm sure you've talked about that a ton. And I think that's something that's really missed by a lot of people. We've just come to believe like, oh, diabetes or insulin resistance or any of that stuff is all just about sugar. And it's not. So what becomes really important through a longevity lens, if we want to live longer, we want to slow down the aging process, we want to regulate those pathways. And so this is why really over the past, 2 years, and especially over this past year, everybody is talking about intermittent fasting because this is going to be one of the quickest ways to re-regulate these pathways. Intermittent fasting actually turns on that AMPK. Believe it or not, metformin is clinically used in longevity, right? So metformin activates that AMPK pathway. Well, why is that used in diabetes? Because diabetes is activating the mTOR. We want to shut that down. We want to inhibit that. We want to turn on the switch over here with AMPK. That's one of the things that metformin does. A natural version of that is going to be berberine, for example. So alpha lipoic acid is going to be, another one of those things that comes in there and kind of helps with that pathway and that insulin resistance. Exercise helps tremendously to balance out those pathways and activate those. So this is fundamentally the thing that we are seeing such an imbalance in today around the globe, especially in the US, because of when we look at obesity, right? So that's why so many people are really dialing into that particular one specifically to say, how do we re-regulate this? What do we do?
Yeah. And I think, I talk a lot about fasting, intermittent fasting. So is that something that you really advocate in your practice?
I do, and here's kind of what I was alluding to, a little bit earlier in the interview is, and I had a really amazing conversation with Dr. Jim Laval about this, and he is like the metabolic expert. He literally, for over 20 years, written the metabolic code. He teaches for A4M, all the top anti-aging and longevity programs around the world. Like people learn from him, and we talked a lot about this. And so, intermittent fasting is important. However, what we love to do as humans is we love to go all in. Here's some data. We're going to do it. And we don't just do it. We don't just dip our toe in. Like we're like going to be extremists. We're going to do it. We're going to go all in and we're doing it all the time because this is really important. This is really good for you. At minimum, intermittent fasting, you can get benefits. And I know you can speak to this really well with that 12-hour window. And so that becomes a healthy, good, normal, adaptive window of intermittent fasting. You, depending on the system, depending on the level, this is all precise based on the person. So there are times that I'm going to have some clients that we are going to move to more of a 18-hour fasting window, right? And we're really going to go into that smaller 6-hour to 8-hour window and 6 hours with some people. So I take it on an individual basis. I always feel safe telling anybody you will benefit from 12 hours. Should you go 16? Should you go 18? Should you go longer? Should you go do a 3-day fast? That's not necessarily appropriate for everybody all the time. So be careful about fads, be careful about reading a book and just thinking, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to do it. Because again, you'll see benefits for about 30 days. And then what happens is then the long-term effect of this, it does become a stressor to the system.
Hmm.
Even if you look back at primal eating, hunting and gathering, we had times of feast and times of famine. So this is not a put your foot on the gas pedal and just go, 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 go. You want to have balance. And this is one of the biggest principles of longevity. It's not extremes. You can have extremes for very short periods of time, but it's about flexibility. It's not about rigidity, rather, right? It's not like all or none. It's and also rest and play, stop and go, right?
Yeah, no, great advice. I think too often, especially in this space, people think in absolutes.
Yeah,
I mean, oh my God, I have to do keto. I have to eat this way. I have to fast, and
yeah.
so you're right. I mean, there's a balance there. So yeah, that was well said. Yeah.
Thanks.
Um,
And I think, to the point you just made, one of the things that's always so empowering for my clients is that when we do look at their genetics and they see their potential and their propensities, it also gives a lot of clarity around food. It gives so much, like we waste so much mental energy and effort around food, obsessing about it. Should I, shouldn't I? Is it this fad diet or that? And there's going to be a lot of strong advocates that have very specific opinions. Plant-based is best, carnivore is best, keto is best, paleo is best. Well, it may be best for them, but is it best for you?
mhm.
And I think that's one of the, time and time again, that's one of the most empowering places that expands my own clients, just understanding of their own potential and possibility. And so it's like, oh, I don't have to do that diet. No wonder that wasn't working for me. That wasn't aligned. Like I was actually turning off my potential instead of turning it on. I was doing the exact opposite of what really does work best for me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Um, Another one is mitochondrial dysfunction. There's a lot of books out there about the
yeah.
mitochondria. Mitochondria is kind of the powerhouse of the cell.
Mhm.
So, what are some things we can do to um, improve the health of our mitochondria?
You are going to just love it. Like you're feeding me the questions. Intermittent fasting. Again, so again, there's benefits. And think about this. So the main dysregulator, disruptor to the cell is inflammation. So what happens is the more that there is, again, we're just going to keep it simple today, stress to the system. That stress could be mental, emotional, it can be chemical, environmental, it can even be physical stressors, right? So the more that inflammatory cascade is in action. Think of inflammation as just disruption, noise, chaos in the body. And so what begins to happen is that first of all, there's going to be receptors blocked on the outside of the cell. So certain key nutrients, hormones, signal modulators are not going to come in. But also the cell then internally has kind of this extra inflammation because really we start to see this development of what are called senescent cells. And that's next. And you're probably going to want to talk about that because that's the zombie cells. But it's just inflammation from within. And so now we've got chaos inside, chaos outside. And now the cell isn't able to produce and do the very thing that it's designed to do, which is, of course, that mitochondria create energy. So we're feeling really fatigued and depleted all the time. It's like we're trying to figure out how do I get my energy going? How do I restore it? And so again, let's keep it super simple. Are there supplements? Yes. I tell people, why are we going to start with supplements when the system is so chaotic? Right? You're going to put good money into a noisy system that's only going to be able to do a little bit with that. So we don't always need to start with some magic pill or bullet. It's just saying, wait, how can I bring some ease to my system? And so it could be intermittent fasting if we're eating all the time, if we're high stress. If you're stressed, it could be something as simple as beginning just to notice your breathing pattern and regulate the rate at which you breathe to begin to activate that autonomic nervous system. This is my biggest passion of all. Like if we just think of inflammation, when we think of stress, that's kind of triggering all of these 9 hallmarks. Like that's what it all boils down to. It's all the stress and the chaos and the inflammation is interfering with our physiology and our ability to live a long life well in 9 different key areas. And so we just go, great, figure out where your biggest stress is. Is it food? Is it your brain never turning off? Are you anxious? Are you depressed? Are you overloaded? Are you overwhelmed? Like what is happening? And is fasting going to be the first place for you? Do we need to slow down that breath? Do we need to just get you sleeping so you can actually repair? Because if you could get a good night's sleep, your body will detox. It will begin to clean out some of the noise so that the cell and the mitochondria can actually function. And then we can move into supplements, and then we can move into peptides, and then we can move into advanced strategies. But if we're not doing the basics well, Doc, everybody wants just give me the shiny thing over here. Like, let's just take it back to basics. There's some very simple things that will shift your system right away.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So, on that note, and you've kind of mentioned it all along, but instead of just continuing to finish these individually, because they all kind of overlap, like what you were saying. So, give us some recommendations, and I know you guys individualize recommendations, but give us some recommendations on just things that everybody can improve on. Again, you've touched on it some. I mean, what does a typical day look like for Dr. Melissa as far as you fasting, what you eat, and how you exercise? I mean, just give us some general tips that can improve all 9 of these things.
Okay. So a Dr. Melissa day. These are most days. I've got days too where I'm just like, I'm going to sleep in later and whatever. But first and foremost, for me, sleep is a non-negotiable. I had years where I wasn't sleeping, and the effects of what was happening in my physiology, my hormonal expression, all of it, right? So I began to covet my sleep instead of like, I got to answer a few more emails. Well, this is my me time. No. Bedtime is bedtime. So I'm in bed no later than 10:30, 10 to 10:30. And I'm up typically by around 6:30. 6 is when I'm waking up, but I kind of do a half hour in bed of doing breath work, doing some gratitude, doing some mental clarity, really kind of setting my system and my intention to move into the day. As I get out of bed, I'll take a few minutes and I'll actually activate my musculoskeletal system, right? So I'll kind of roll all the joints and I'll get the body ready for the day. Then I'm a mom. So then it's then my routine becomes my son's routine. So we're getting ready for school, and breakfast, I do typically most days go at least 12 hours. Some days I'll go 14 to 16 hours. I'm a 3 meal a day girl. I don't snack. And I'm all about nutrient density. So for me, I'm going to be, and also this works with my genotype, but I'm more of a Mediterranean approach. I do a lot of really healthy fats. If I could probably just drink olive oil, that's probably what I would do. Breakfast is going to be a protein, or it's going to be an avocado and some greens. I don't do shakes or anything like that. I do have coffee. Some of us are fast metabolizers, some of us are slow metabolizers. Coffee's not bad, just understanding how it works for you. And, and then I move into my day, but because I'm in front of a computer a lot, I do a lot of little high intensity workout sessions throughout the day. And I will literally bring activity into my day, and I'm conscious of it. Movement is so key to longevity. And there's more research showing the benefits of shorter bouts of exercise throughout the day than one long hour workout at the gym. And so that's been my approach for years. So, whether I'm doing a walking meeting, I'll go out for a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood on certain meetings. I'll literally, probably TMI, guys, but I want you to understand how you can do this while I'm in the bathroom in the morning doing my hair or makeup or brushing my teeth. I'm doing squats. I'm doing lunges. I am literally like, I'll do calf raises, right? So I'm literally doing things. I'll take a minute and I'll do some kickboxing. Like I'm doing things in my day where there might not sometimes just be, like when I'm pumping my gas, I'm actually doing exercise when I'm at so times where we might not think like, oh, this is just wasted time. You can always be intentional.
I'm sure you get some strange looks with that one.
I look hey, maybe I'll inspire somebody. Like, whatever. It's all good. It's all good. And so, yeah, and I have rituals. So I love starting the morning with coffee and a good breakfast and some time with my son. I love going into my day and finding the pockets to be intentional, to move, to breathe. I have to be very intentional about my breath. And I do want to take a minute and tell you guys about that because I think it's the fastest path in to toggling your system and moving from stress to ease so you can be super resilient. So breath is always throughout my day. It's always on my conscious radar. I do take a few supplements. I take, my main peptide is BPC 157 that I'm going to take. I'm always going to take my omega-3. I'm always going to take my D3K2. So fundamental. I took my DHEA this morning. I don't do a ton of supplements, but I have a few key ones. I'll do some berberine. Just why? Because I know, I want to make sure that I keep that insulin resistance potential dialed down. And I want to keep that AMPK pathway activated. So I take some very intentional supplements. Nighttime dinner is also ritual. I always have a glass of red wine. I make sure it's sustainable, it's organic, it's clean, nutrient dense food, time with family, doing what I love with the people that I love. And then I'm in bed by 10 or 10:30. And so the key pieces that I want to pull out for you guys that any of us can be doing, probably what you heard is I'm not doing some crazy regimented stuff. My approach doesn't mean it's everybody's. It's moderation, not deprivation. It's about listening to the needs of my body. Some days I don't get as much time to go. I don't get the opportunity to do a walking meeting, right? Some days I'm sitting longer. So it's kind of not every day is exactly the same. So how do I still honor me? Well, I make sure to tune in and kind of check in with my body. But here's what we know from the longevity studies. People that historically have lived the longest around the world, one of the fundamental principles that they live by is what I've termed it to be is flexibility. They're always looking forward. They're not afraid to die, but they think they're going to live forever. So there's always this elongation. They're not compressed. Oh my gosh, I got to be here. I got to be there. I got to be at that meeting. Like this is happening. Like they're not compressed and feeling tight and stressed and condensed. They elongate. So that's how I set my day. I look forward into my day. I set my intention into all the great things I'm ready and looking forward to experiencing. Some days it happens, some days it doesn't, but I'm already elongating time. I'm opening up, I'm creating flexibility and space. When unexpected things happen, I'm human. Sometimes I get ticked off and I want to compress. And then I just take a moment and I just pause to create a little bit of that flexibility. I make time to laugh, and to love, and to play. Purpose and connection are historically some of the hallmarks that have been found in like the 85-year study out of Harvard. Like this is what really matters in the people who have lived the longest life and lived it really well, lived it in a thriving and vibrant state. Let me be clear, like vibrant and vital. And so today, the fastest thing I'd love to share, if it's okay, Doc, I know we probably only have a few minutes left, is the power of breath and the importance of life is going to happen. You cannot control every day. You're going to have some days where you want to eat a bag of potato chips, and some days you're going to be the perfect compliant client and you're going to do your intermittent fasting. You're going to be to bed on time. And then other days, it's all going to be completely different. So first, give yourself a little grace and courtesy and just embrace the fact that you're human and it's okay to be flexible. The more flexible you are and not as harsh and compressive and judgmental of yourself, you're already going to extend your lifespan. And you're going to create greater space for those telomeres, and your mitochondria are going to be like, oh, we're feeling a little freer, a little bit more energy to make energy. The more compressed and the more stressed, you're literally putting weight on your physiology internally, and you're slowing things down, and you're making it harder for your cells and for your body to really express vibrant health. And yet, when stress strikes, what the heck do you do? Because it's going to happen. Recognize that stress is a friend and not a foe. Recognize that even in the moments that tick you off like crazy, that feel overwhelming or overloading, they actually are presenting an opportunity for you to simply say yes, more of, or no, less of. And yet in that moment, if you still have to be resourceful and handle a tough situation, you can create your greatest state of resiliency and resource by focusing on your breath. So simply by breathing in and out through your nose, just easy, gentle, not through your mouth. Mouth breathing, that's a whole other conversation. We can do a breath talk interview one time if you want, but close the mouth, in and out through the nose. Try to slow it down. See if you can breathe about 7 breaths per minute. And that's going to help to activate your autonomic nervous system. If that feels too difficult, then a faster way is you can start to hum. I'm really ticked off, but Melissa told me to hum, so I'm humming. That activates your autonomic nervous system. And that is rest and digest of the parasympathetic versus fight and flight of the sympathetic.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Or you can do what I do and jump in my swimming pool in the middle of February in Oklahoma. So
100%.
yeah.
There's so much. Oh my gosh. 100%.
No, I say that
stories
jokingly because everybody knows me around here that I do that. A friend of mine got me doing that. And so I post videos all the time. We had a cold front not very long ago and I had ice in my pool and I've got a video of me, you know, moving ice around. But so people think I'm crazy. I say that kind of jokingly, but I do that.
So beneficial.
Yeah.
Just start your day with a minute of cold shower. I do go through those times too, where I'll start with a minute of cold shower, right, to get a little of that hormetic effect, and then I'll turn up. I don't do that every day. Some days I'm just like, I'm just not doing it. I'm not doing the cold today. I'm not doing it.
I do the same thing. Yeah, there's certain days I'm just like I'm not feeling it today. So,
Uh-uh.
well, thank you for sharing your routine because there's a lot of just great things there that anybody can benefit from. You know, having a routine, maybe doing some intermittent fasting, eating clean, you know, limiting stress, moving. I mean, man, those are the hallmarks of longevity. Drinking water. I mean, you know. So anyway, yeah, everything you mentioned is just. I mean, anybody can benefit from those things. So yeah, appreciate you sharing that. So
100%. And if I could, just one more thing, I want people to know it feels like, wait, drink water, move, sleep, intermittent fast. Man, this is what Doc's been telling us. Yeah, he's telling you for a reason. Like we keep thinking it needs to be something more. And I'll tell you, when I did the Longevity Summit and I interviewed more than 65 of today's top leaders from scientists to shamans and everything in between, what I heard time and time again, and what I also see in my own practice and know to be true, is that fundamentally we collectively are not doing the basics well. And there is so much, if you're just willing to stop resisting yourself and just go, oh, it can be this easy, it can be that easy. So just enjoy the process and know that each little thing, I always say a longevity life is a long life lived well. And we don't get there until we begin here in this moment. And each small step that you do today adds up each day, every day. And it really accumulates and creates kind of this compounding interest effect so that you truly do look and feel and live your long life well. And you can make it easily, gang, to 120 and beyond.
that's awesome. Well, you are very inspiring. I know I'm inspired, so thank you for all that. So, I think you've already answered this question, so you don't necessarily have to say it again. But I always kind of end my show by asking my guests to give us one health tip that can make us healthier today. And you kind of talked about the breathing. Would that be your answer, or would you say something else? Sorry, I kind of put you on the spot
I'll
here.
say breathing. I'll say
Okay.
breathing because that will be the easiest. Yes. Just slow down that breath and just bring your awareness to it. Close your mouth in and out through the nose. There you go.
Okay. Okay. Well, very good. Well, thank you very much for your time. So the book is Codes of Longevity. And again, for the listeners, we didn't even barely touch the surface of this. So I encourage you to get this book, and I know they can go to www.codesoflongevity.com. I'm sure they could probably find it on Amazon
Yep.
as well. I think that's where I got it. Your website is docmelissa.com. Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Any other way people can get a hold of you?
I mean, social media and all the things, but just docmelissa.com becomes the easiest because then you can kind of connect in all the other places. And yeah, the book is available anywhere books are sold. So check it out. It's the Kindle is only 99 cents right now, you guys, for through the end of this month, and then it's going up. So grab it while you can, enjoy it. And thank you guys, just thank you. We're all in it together to keep supporting and inspiring each other and ourselves so that we can show up and lead and love and live fully.
For sure. Okay. Well, we appreciate your time and expertise on this subject. So, and guys, I appreciate you listening, and I will talk to you next time.